It's tips time. Welcome to Training Intervention Program for Behavior Change, Tips for Behavior Change. I am your psychologist and behavior specialist, Geraldine Garwood. And today we are going to look at tips for talking racism with your child. And so we are going to be speaking with Victoria Pusey, student at Meadowbrook High School. She's a fifth former and she's getting ready to do her CSEC exams. Welcome, Victoria. Thank you for joining me today. And so Victoria will be talking to us about um, Caribbean parents and if they should talk with their child about racism, her views on the George Floyd situation, and provide some tips on why, as parents, we need to discuss racism with our children. So, Victoria, should Caribbean parents talk about racism with their children?
Well, yes, I do agree with the teaching of racism in the homes. And the reason for this is because we are going to experience this in the future, or we will see it around us in our daily lives, and we will need to understand what it's about. So, teaching this to children will give them a fresh start or a little exposure to what this
Right?
issue is about and how it affects us as Black people mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. So we have
That's,
to get the basics of what this is.
that's very
So
good. Thank you. Yeah, that's very, very good. Very valid points. What are your views about George Floyd? The George Floyd issue and the old slogan, "No Black Lives Matter." How do you feel about that?
I first of all, I agree with the many black people in America and even around the world that the death of George Floyd was very, very traumatizing and not really a pleasant sight.
Yeah,
And it is also cruelty to Black people because he was abiding with what the police were telling him to do, and in the end, the police were killing him,
right.
and it's unjust. And I am glad that we are really putting our foot down and for your feet down, I should say, and saying this is enough. It's time for the policies in countries that have this issue of racism to change so that Black people can be more involved, will not be left out, and will be happy to live in the countries that they are residing in.
All right, that's
Um,
very good.
mhm.
Um, we saw some Jamaicans demonstrating in solidarity with other Black persons around the world. Do you think, as Jamaicans, we should be demonstrating and participating in solidarity with those persons?
Yes, however, I have something else to add to that, but let me just say why I say yes. Yes, because we are going to also experience racism. On the news last night, Jamaicans that are over in the US or in any other country that is mostly dominant by white people have experienced criticism based on the color of their skin
Mm-hmm.
and have been put down upon. So for us to demonstrate is also to show our agreement with this because we're going to feel it even if we're not going to live in America. If we're just going to visit, we are going to feel it. I can I haven't really experienced it, but my parents have, and they have they have told me what it was like during their trips. My dad
Right.
had a very similar scenario when we were in Florida some years ago. So we really have to also put our foot down and say, okay, enough is enough. We are also feeling this issue, even though we are in Jamaica. And even if we are not going to go abroad, there are still some people. There are still some persons who will be coming to us for tourism. Yes, they love our country and all, but honestly, some of them do not like the people because of one, our
Uh,
color, we're Black,
yes.
and our background and all that. So we're going to experience it in Jamaica, but not as much as we would be in other countries that are white dominant.
Yeah, very much food for thought you have given me there, Victoria. Very much food for thought. And so, though, I want to ask you, we saw the demonstrations in the US. We saw that it caused a lot of damages, probably to the economy. Do you think that if the persons had demonstrated peacefully, they would have been getting the response that they are getting?
A yes and a no. Um, the yes, because honestly, sometimes we have to do certain actions in order for our voices and the things that we want out to be heard
Yes,
by persons in charge. No, because no, the money that would be spent on other things, for example, Corona, which is still out, some of that money might have to be put into the rebuilding of certain buildings.
right.
However, people, but that might not be the case, but anything can happen, even though there are fundraisers and causes that have been put up towards the rebuilding of those things in America and in other places that have been vandalized in other countries. Honestly, the money might not be enough, and so they might have to pull in some resources from from other areas that they're using that money for.
Yeah, very
So
good point.
yeah.
Provide our parents with at least three tips on why they should discuss racism with their child.
3 tips. One, why you should teach racism to us as children and even teens, because maybe we haven't experienced it yet as teenagers. One, as I said earlier, we are going to face it sometime in our life. We can't avoid it. It is still going to be here. I am not, although we are really trying to change things, we are not sure if everybody in the world is going to change and say, okay, let's stop this racism thing. Some people
Okay.
still aren't on our page with the Black Lives Matter thing. Some people aren't on our page. And we're gonna have to deal with them sooner or later. But they're gonna have to change sooner or later. But until then, we're gonna still have racism, even if we do this big commotion thing. We will have many other people come on our side, but there will still be a few numbers that will be on the other side saying, no, we don't care. Secondly, why you should teach it to us so that we can know what to do when we are in that certain situation.
Wow.
If we don't know how to react or how to manage ourselves when we're going to be in that certain situation where someone says something bad about us, especially when it relates to our race, we are going to either react. We're well, not either. We're going to react in a very negative way. That in the end might put us in a very serious and very not so nice side of the police, because it has happened. White people, when they say something bad to a white person, when a white person says something bad to a black person, sorry, it either ends up in somebody beating somebody up and going to jail, or probably they start crying and then end up committing some suicidal things. In other
Okay.
words, that they're not wanted and those things. So we need to know how to react when we get those comments. And thirdly, why parents should teach us racism is that they don't want us to be in the same foot as they were back then.
Right.
In other words, you don't want we and plus and so that when anything happens to us when we get there, we can maybe start something that can change the world, which has happened.
Oh, so you're talking about advocacy. So you'll be
Yes, we
able to
can
advocate. Right.
once you teach us about racism, we can advocate against this even further, like what we're doing now, so that the world can be a better place for other generations other than us to come.
Well, Victoria, you have given us food for thought today on the whole issue of racism. And I do agree with you that it is very important for parents to teach their children about racism because may, the possibility exists that they may experience racism. And so they do need to learn how to respond and how to cope emotionally and psychologically if that experience is meted out to them. So that's it for today on Tips for Behavior Change. Please subscribe to this channel and make your comments. And you can also say to us what other topics you will want us to discuss. Thank you, Victoria Pusey, a lawyer in the making from Meadowbrook High School.
Thank you so much for having me.